In 2011, we saw the merger of Meet the Composer and the American Music Center. American Music Center has been around since the 30s. These are organizations that have been involved with American music, new music, whatever language we use for the kind of music, but the American composer and America's contribution to the symphonic art form. And both of these organizations perceived they were quite vital. There were many signs of vitality. But when you dig deep, as they did, they both discovered that there were some real challenges to being able to operate as they are. And when they look at what's going on with the shift to digital and what that means for contemporary composers and the access to that music and to audiences, they're saying the cost to live in the digital world and the shift that you need for that and the ability to have enough talent assembled to really do that well to benefit composers, the organizations that take advantage of those composers, the public that uses those composers, listens to those composers, says, this isn't working. We need to think differently. They spent a year in very challenging, honest, thoughtful conversations. And what they concluded was that it was more than a merger they needed. They needed to be about something different. They needed to take the concepts that had emerged in the 1900s era of our lives and say, wait a minute, in the 21st century, what would that look like? So they said, wait a minute, we're not just merging. We're creating New Music USA. It will have some elements of what we've had, but it's about how we're about new music in this century, in this country. That could not have happened without facing the realities and being willing to have some of the most honest conversation and then saying, do I have the courage to act? So if I build on some of the other blogs that you may see in this series, when achieving vision is constrained, when that capacity to be about scale of impact is constrained, when the markets are giving clear signals that say, wait a minute, you need to be thinking differently. When the tyranny of mission is colliding with the negative consequences of break-even or deficit budgets, organizations are faced with options that they may not like, but may in fact free them for a more vital future. They might need to partner. They might need to align. They might need to close, freeing those resources for something else. They might need to welcome others who will work collaboratively around a common agenda, saying maybe our shared mission has more value for our vision than our individual mission. Because when you operate without scale of impact, it often becomes transparently obvious that it's a false civic value. And at that point, you run the risk of presenting a genuine, authentic, credible value proposition in the community. So I don't suggest that this is an easy thing to address. I think this is really hard work. I think it forces organizations to think differently. And I'll close this with an illustration from another part of the sector. Many, many years ago, Mary Lasker, a wonderful person in this country, drove the National Cancer Act, which created the government investment in cancer research. As people in this country were living longer, the incidence of cancer simply went up. And how do we stop this terrible, terrible thing that affects so many people and families? And the investment in research was really important. And as we began to have survivors of many forms of cancer, or the families of those who didn't survive a form of cancer, groups emerged to fight cancer. So you have those that work at breast cancer, and those who work at colon cancer, and prostate cancer, and on and on and on. And you have groups that organize all with a common and related purpose. How do we accelerate the research to prevent and cure this form of cancer? But you know, something's really fascinating in the cancer research right now. The researchers are beginning to say we have to pursue disease-specific research, not organ-specific research. And the advancements are around the disease-specific vis-a-vis the organ-specific. That some of these diseases are more likely to be related one to the other. So there's a relationship between breast cancer and prostate cancer. Now we have all these organizations that are existing because the diseases have built a constituency around the organ and the risk of death. And now they have to say, wait a minute, if it's about a disease, not an organ, do we continue to organize around the organs? We've got these structures, these systems, these constituencies, but something seismic has happened in our world. Do we have to think differently? And there will be people saying, but that's not our mission. So when we feel the earthquakes, we feel the seismic shifts, something isn't aligned. It frees us, if we want to say, wait a minute, can we adapt? If we adapt, could we be more vital? Could we create more artistic energy in our community? Can this orchestra really be even more than it is today? So if you click later on the one on adaptive capacity, I'll give you a few ideas about how you may create the capacity to adapt when earthquakes happen.